After years of hospital night shifts, I can tell the difference between actual danger and background noise. You learn to sort things into two categories: worth getting up for and ignore it. That Thanksgiving at my parents' house didn't feel any different at first. Just a cozy holiday wrapped in the usual chaos of aging parents. Their place is one of those old two-story homes built before insulation was a thing. Pipes click, floorboards complain under every step, and the basement has a constant faint smell of damp cardboard. My parents treat it like a storage unit: boxes, chest freezer, and a furnace that looks ready to retire. I came home that year because my dad's blood pressure had been creeping up, and my mom had no business climbing step stools to dig out tablecloths. I slipped right back into caretaker mode, checking my dad's meds, telling my mom the stuffing didn't need just a little more salt, and eyeing the timer on the turkey like it was a cardiac monitor. Everything was normal, right up until the basement light turned on by itself. We were halfway through dinner when I noticed it, a thin glow under the basement door. We never leave that light on. My dad waved it off, saying he must have grabbed something earlier and forgot to pull the chain. I stood, cracked the basement door just enough to look down. The bulb was still glowing, and the pull chain was moving, just slightly, like it had been tugged a few seconds earlier. No footsteps, no voices, no one down there. I shut the door, told myself the chain probably swung when I opened it, and went back to the table. An hour later, the light was on again. This time, no one had been near the door, and I knew it. We'd all been in the same room, arguing about whether the parade floats counted as real Thanksgiving traditions or just background TV noise. The swing in the chain was more obvious this time, an arc still slowing down. I went down halfway and pulled the chain myself, watched the light click off. No flicker, no loose bulb, nothing weird. Upstairs, I noticed a small smudge near the basement doorknob. Muddy, the kind you get from stepping through wet earth. I wiped it with my thumb. Fresh. Probably came in on Dad's shoes earlier, I told myself, though I'd watched him take them off at the door like he always does. During dessert, another noise came up through the floor, a metallic clank like something brushed the furnace ducting. My mom paused mid-sentence. Even my dad lifted an eyebrow. Then, they laughed it off. Old house, my dad said. Sure, but old houses don't turn their own lights on. When my parents settled into the living room to nap off the meal, I stood by the basement door for a long moment, listening. I don't scare easily. You can't in my line of work. But that house was too quiet, the light too persistent, and those sounds felt planned. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the door, and started down the wooden stairs. Each step creaked, the kind of sound that settles into your bones if you grew up hearing it. Halfway down, the temperature dropped. You could feel the basement air hit you, cooler, heavier. My flashlight beam caught the pull chain first. It was swinging again. Not wildly, but with enough force that it hadn't started slowing yet, as if someone had just tugged it and slipped into the shadows. I scanned the room. The old freezer hummed in the corner. Boxes lined the shelves. Laundry basket waiting for wash day. Everything looked like it belonged there, but the floor didn't. Fresh mud tracked across the concrete. Dark, wet, unmistakable. Not smudges, footprints, leading from the small basement window on the left side of the house, the one near the driveway. The prints went straight toward the furnace, and then they stopped behind it. I stepped quietly, shining the flashlight around the sides of the furnace. Behind it, tucked into the narrow gap where my dad kept old paint cans, there was a bent window screen. The window above it hung slightly open, latch undone. Someone had crawled in. My arm tingled, the way it does when adrenaline catches up after your brain tries too long to be rational. Someone had been down here, might have been down here for hours, maybe longer. And the light turning on wasn't the house glitching, it was someone moving around, listening to us. I went upstairs and locked the basement door behind me. Didn't tell my parents the details. I just said they needed to go upstairs now. Then I called the non-emergency line. Police arrived fast. They swept the house, checked outside, followed the muddy prints to the window. Whoever it was had come and gone more than once. Officers guessed it might have been a transient, someone using the basement when my parents were out grocery shopping. Maybe they slipped back in when they saw the family car return, trying to grab their things. Maybe. Nobody found the person. Nobody explained anything. My dad had a metal bar installed on the basement window. New locks, too. My mom insisted it'd be one of those stories we'll laugh about next Thanksgiving. But I keep replaying one thing. Those footprints weren't wandering. They weren't random. They walked in a straight line toward the furnace. The perfect place to hide, tucked in darkness, while the voices of my parents and me drifted down through the vents. They stood there long enough to listen to us moving around, long enough to decide what they wanted to do next. Thanksgiving at our house was supposed to be simple that year. No big drama, no traveling, no giant guest list. Just me, my wife Erin, our 7-year-old son Max, and my younger brother Kyle. Turkey, football, jokes that were only funny because we were tired. Honestly, I was looking forward to it. Outside, the storm had already been loud for hours. Real Pacific Northwest stuff. Wind hammering the siding, rain hitting the windows hard enough that you could hear individual drops, branches scraping the roof like they wanted inside. Inside, everything felt warm and ordinary. The Macy's parade replayed on TV, the oven door kept fogging up, and the house smelled like rosemary and butter. We were halfway through dinner, still giving the turkey side-eye for being too dry, when the storm decided to show off. A flash lit up the whole room like a camera had gone off in our faces. 1 second later, something cracked nearby, loud enough to vibrate the table, and the entire house went dead. TV gone. Fridge silent. Overhead lights nothing. Only the candles on the table stayed alive. Max whispered, "Cool." Erin said something that definitely wasn't cool. Kyle laughed like this was all part of the plan. Welcome to rustic Thanksgiving. I grabbed the old flashlight from the junk drawer and headed for the breaker panel. Everything looked normal, not a blown fuse. Just the storm killing power up and down the street. Through the front window, every other house on the block was dark too. No porch lights, no holiday decorations, just shadow. I headed back toward the dining room, and that's when I saw it. Our sliding glass door takes up almost the whole back wall. At night, it's basically a giant mirror. But near the bottom corner, there was a small foggy patch on the outside of the glass, like someone had leaned close and breathed on it. I wiped it with my sleeve. It smeared exactly like breath would. Dog must have been here, I said, though even I didn't buy it. Ruger had been locked in our bedroom all evening because he begged too much during dinner. Ruger's in the room, Erin reminded me from behind. I didn't answer. I went back to the table. We tried to keep the mood light, candlelit Thanksgiving, kind of cozy, right? But the storm felt louder now, like the darkness outside had weight to it. Then we heard the sound. Soft, close, coming from the direction of the sliding door. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't rain. It was subtler. Everyone stopped talking. Max looked up, wide-eyed. Kyle frowned, trying to act tougher than he felt. Erin whispered, "Was that?" I grabbed the flashlight again and walked toward the door slowly. The candlelight behind me made my reflection stretch across the glass, but the foggy patch was already returning. Bigger this time. Slow. Expanding. Exactly like someone standing inches away, breathing out. I stopped a foot from the curtain. "Don't open anything," Erin said. I didn't plan on opening a thing. I just wanted to know what was out there. I held the flashlight down at my leg so I wouldn't blind myself in the reflection, then lifted the curtain with 2 fingers and flicked the light upward. That beam hit a face. A real face. right on the other side of the glass. White skin reflecting back the light. A dark knit cap, eyes squinting against the flashlight. No surprise, just a flat, almost annoyed look, like I'd turned on a light too early. The face jerked back and disappeared into the black yard so fast the fog on the glass distorted as it moved. I dropped the curtain and locked the door in the same motion. Aaron grabbed Max. Kyle started checking the hallway like he expected someone at every window. I dialed 911. My voice came out tighter than I wanted, explaining that someone had been standing right up against our sliding door, watching us. The dispatcher said calls were stacked because of the storm, but they'd send someone as soon as possible. She told me not to go outside. I didn't need the reminder. We gathered in the living room with the candles, all of us listening for anything. Footsteps on the deck, the scrape of someone testing a window, anything that didn't match the storm. Even Ruger was silent behind the bedroom door. Every minute stretched like 10. By the time the officers knocked, the storm had eased up, but the house still felt strange, like all the warmth we'd had earlier was gone. 2 cops with flashlights walked the perimeter. I watched from inside as beams of light swept across the backyard. "Here," one of them called. He was crouched right at the sliding door, aiming his flashlight down. There were shoe prints in the mud, deep ones, right up against the glass. Not 1 or 2, but a trail pacing back and forth along the door, then leading to the kitchen window, like the person had been checking for entry points. The officer came inside and said, "Storm like this knocks out power, people start checking houses. Some are just looking for quick opportunities. Looks like you startled him before he tried anything." That landed wrong. Didn't make me feel safe at all. They took a report, told us to keep everything locked, and said they'd patrol the block again before finishing the shift. By then, the candles were burning low, and Max had fallen asleep against Aaron. When they left, the house felt too dark and too quiet. The next morning, I went out to look again with real daylight. The prints were clearer. Average size, cheap boot tread pattern, nothing distinct. But when I stepped back inside and really looked at the sliding door, I saw something I'd missed in the dark. 2 faint smudges, exactly at the height of that foggy patch. Not fingerprints, not a hand, lips. Someone had pressed their mouth against the glass, leaning in, testing how quietly they could breathe on it. I installed a thick wood board in the track that same day, and motion lights, and a camera, all before cleaning the dishes from Thanksgiving. And now every time we lose power, even if it's just for a split second, I automatically turn toward that sliding door, expecting a face already there, watching, breathing, waiting for us to get distracted again. I drove into Cleveland that Thanksgiving, thinking the worst thing I'd have to deal with was my dad's football commentary and my mom asking why I never visit enough. I live a couple hours away now, out near Toledo. I work long days and holidays sneak up on me. Still, I brought a store-bought pie and did the familiar drive back to the split-level house I grew up in. The one with the same sagging gutter and the same mailbox that's been hit by the snowplow 3 winters in a row. Inside, the place was loud in that old comforting way. My sister yelling at her kids, my brother raiding the turkey skin, my mom acting like she was running a 5-star kitchen, and my dad complaining about modern football. I put my bag in the hall, kissed my mom, and got handed a carving knife before I could take my coat off. It felt like being 13 again, in a good way. After dinner, huge, chaotic, loud, my mom made her annual push for me to stay the night instead of driving back tired. "Don't argue," she said, pointing with a wooden spoon. Guest rooms made up. She wasn't wrong. I was exhausted. I'd finished drywall on a job that morning before heading over, and every joint in my back was reminding me I'm not 20 anymore. So I agreed. One night wouldn't kill me. The guest room is at the end of the hall, The same room that used to be mine before my parents turned it into storage and later into a guest space. Same old dresser, same squeaky window, same view of the side yard where the neighbor's fence leans in like it's tired too. When I went in, I noticed the old door still had that loose latch. It won't stay shut unless you give it an extra push. I shoved it until I heard the little click, changed into sweats, and collapsed onto the bed. I must have fallen asleep fast. The first time I woke up, it was to a faint creak in the hallway, light like someone stepping on a familiar board. I assumed it was my dad going to the bathroom, rolled over, and went back out. The second time I woke up, it wasn't because of a sound. It was the feeling. The air in the room felt heavier, like someone else was in it. I kept still, let my eyes adjust. The room was dim, just a little streetlight glow leaking through the curtains. That's when I saw the guest room door. Open. Enough to see a few inches of the hallway. Enough to see that I definitely hadn't shut it like I thought. I told myself I must have been too tired and not closed it fully. That happens. But even that didn't explain what I heard next. Breathing. Not mine. Not the slow, even breathing of someone asleep. This was close. Low, coming from the foot of the bed. I can't see much past my nose without my glasses, and it was almost pitch black. I stiffened without meaning to. Contractors know house noises. Vents, pipes, settling beams. You learn what's normal. This wasn't normal. This was the sound of a person trying to be quiet, and not exactly pulling it off. I stayed still for a long minute. The breathing got a little louder. Then something else happened. The mattress dipped, just slightly, just enough that I felt the blanket pull toward the bottom of the bed, like someone had put their weight there. I kept my eyes on the foot of the bed. There was a shape. Dark, crouched, or hunched. Not defined enough to see features, but enough that I knew I wasn't imagining it. It was a person, sitting there. "Dad," I whispered. The breathing hitched, but there was no answer. Whatever was at the end of the bed wasn't my father. I moved my hand slowly toward the nightstand. I knew exactly where the lamp was. I'd set my phone next to it earlier. I felt for the metal base, and the breathing changed as soon as my fingers brushed it. Like whoever was sitting there knew what I was about to do. I grabbed the switch and snapped the lamp on. The room lit up instantly. The foot of the bed was empty, but the mattress, still indented. A clean dip in the blanket, like someone heavy had just been sitting there and stood up a second before the light hit. The door was now fully open, showing the dark hallway. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, staring at the dip in the mattress, trying to make sense of it. I'm not the type who jumps to ghosts or nonsense. If something doesn't make sense, I assume there's a logical reason. But every logical reason led back to something I really didn't like thinking about. Someone had been in that room. I finally stood up and checked the closet. Empty. Checked under the bed. Empty. Behind the door. Empty. Then I looked toward the window. The frame didn't look right. The bottom was pushed open just a little, maybe half an inch, enough to break the latch, enough that if someone forced it, it would give. I stepped closer and saw a faint brown smear on the sill. Mud. A streak like someone's pant leg or shoe had brushed it, climbing in or out. That was enough for me. I grabbed my bag, turned off the lamp, and walked straight downstairs. I lay on the living room couch with the TV on mute until morning. I didn't sleep. I just waited. When my mom found me, she asked why I didn't use the bed. Back hurt, I said. It was true, just not for the reasons she thought. Later, when we were packing leftovers and bundling jackets, I went back up there once more to double check. The window was still cracked. The muddy streak was still on the sill. I locked the window properly, came down and told my parents they should get the locks checked and stop leaving the side gate open. Why? Something happened? My dad asked. Nothing big, I said, just old house. Easy target. I didn't tell them about the breathing. or the shape at the foot of the bed, or how long I lay there listening to someone else's air fill the room. Now, when I stay anywhere overnight, hotel, friend's house, doesn't matter, I check every window, every door. I wedge something under the doorknob if I have to. Because once you wake up to the weight of another person in a room where no one should be, and you can't see anything in the dark without glasses, you don't forget it. You don't shrug it off. And you don't ever look at a barely cracked window the same way again. I've spent plenty of Thanksgivings alone in my truck, doing late deliveries while everyone else posts pictures of turkey and family fights. So when my buddy Mark invited me to a Friendsgiving at this rural rental outside Des Moines, I said yes. Figured it'd beat eating gas station pizza at another rest stop. The place sat right next to an open field that used to be corn. By November, the stalks were mostly low stubble with random taller patches still standing along the edges, like somebody just gave up harvesting halfway through. The house itself was warm, windows glowing yellow, muffled football coming through the glass. Inside, mismatched chairs, folding tables, kids running around, people laughing loud. It felt good. We ate, joked about work, argued about football calls, the usual. Every now and then I'd look through the back window at the field. Nothing out there except rows of dark plants disappearing into a black tree line. The first time I heard it, I didn't treat it like anything. I was taking a trash bag out to the bin near the back porch. The wind was kicking up, dragging the sound of the field with it, that dry scraping noise of stalks rubbing together. Then underneath all that, a faint, "Hey." I stopped. Not in a horror movie way, just listening. Could have been a neighbor out near the tree line. Could have been nothing. I tossed the trash and went back inside. Thought I heard someone yell, "Hey out there," I mentioned to Mark. He barely looked up. Neighbors mess around in the field sometimes. Bonfires, target practice, whatever. So I let it go. An hour later, the house had settled into that post-dinner haze. Leftovers cooling on the counter, kids half asleep on couches, football still murmuring in the background. That's when it happened again. This time, everyone heard it. "Hello." Conversation cut off immediately. Orcs paused. People looked around like the sound had come from inside the room. "That wasn't the TV," someone said. The noise came from the back of the house. Stretched, almost lazy, like someone calling from a distance but trying to make sure you did hear it. After a few seconds, everyone shrugged it off and went back to small talk. But now the laughter was thinner. The next call came maybe 10 minutes later. Closer this time. "Hey." The hairs on my neck went up. Not because it sounded scary, because it didn't. It sounded like someone trying out the tone you'd use to ask for help. Someone pulled the curtain back a couple inches. The porch light lit a small circle of grass. Beyond that, darkness, field, indistinct shapes of leftover stalks. Nothing moving. We all stared anyway. Rustling in the field picked up, not in wide sweeps like the wind, but in short, uneven bursts, like footsteps stopping and starting. Mark tried to brush it off. Could be a drunk neighbor, or a prank. Nobody really bought that. Then the voice came again, even closer. "Hey, can you help me?" The tone was wrong. No panic, no urgency. Just a soft, flat request, like someone repeating a phrase they'd heard other people use. A few people exchanged looks. "We should check," someone said. "What if someone's hurt?" I wanted to say, if someone's hurt, they don't hide in a field whispering at strangers. But instead, we ended up doing the stupid compromise. Not going out there, but stepping onto the porch with flashlights. Me, Mark, and another guy grabbed 2 beams and went outside. The cold hit immediately. Porch boards creaked. The house behind us went quiet, everyone watching through the glass. "Hello?" Mark called out. "We hear you. Are you okay?" Nothing at first. Then from somewhere low to the ground, hidden in the stalks, "Hey!" My flashlight swept across the field. For half a second, I caught something pale between two rows. Not a face, exactly, but the shape of one. A curve of cheekbone catching a slice of light before dipping back down. "I saw that," I said. "Someone's crouched out there." "Maybe they fell," the other guy said, moving forward a step. "No," I said, putting a hand out to stop him. "If they're hurt, they'd move toward the house, not stay low." The voice came again, sharp this time. "Hey, come here." That was it. Every instinct from years of late-night rural deliveries lit up at once. "This is wrong," I said quietly. "We're not walking out there." Mark hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, let's call it in." We went back inside, locked the doors, and made a non-emergency call. The deputy arrived maybe 15 minutes later. His cruiser lights washed over the house. We watched him walk the edge of the field with his flashlight. He called out. No answer. When he came back, he told us he didn't see anyone, just a few trampled patches along the edge, like someone had been standing there pacing back and forth. We all tried to go back to normal after he left, but the vibe was off. The field felt too big, the house too small, the wind too loud. I left earlier than I planned. Driving home, every time I passed another field, I braced for a voice to float out of it. Now, when I'm on a rural route at night and I hear anything coming from the dark, a shout, a laugh, a "hey man," I don't move toward it anymore. I get back in the truck, I lock the doors, I stay in the light, because what I realized that night is simple. People who really need help come closer. The ones who stay hidden in the dark while calling to you, they're waiting to see if you will come closer to them. Thanksgiving is the one day in November I usually get to pretend my job doesn't exist. Patrol that month is a mess. DUIs, break-ins, family brawls. When the schedule finally showed I had the holiday off, my sister texted in all caps, "You're coming, don't even try to dodge it." Her house looked exactly like Thanksgiving should. Warm lights, yelling kids, too many dishes on the table. And then there was her new boyfriend, Evan. He stood when I walked in, over-smiling, holding flowers like a movie extra. "Officer Big Brother," he said. "Heard a lot about you." Nobody ever calls me that. People say cop, officer. I shook his hand anyway, gripped too firm like he'd Googled how to impress your girlfriend's family. Brand new shoes, expensive-looking watch that probably wasn't expensive. He kept looking at my sister like he was checking whether he was doing things right. Still, I tried. I wanted her to have a win. But even early on, little things stuck in my head. He worked in finance, but couldn't explain what he actually did. When my dad asked where his office was, Evan named a street downtown full of salons and cafes. He said he grew up around here, but paused too long when asked which high school. My sister jumped in and answered for him. I convinced myself to let it go. Eat turkey. Laugh at the kids. Let the guy settle in. Dinner was loud, chaotic, perfect. Then Evan's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, and for half a second his expression went completely blank. Not annoyed, not confused, just neutral. Then he smiled again. "Sorry," he said, pushing his chair back. "Work thing. I'll be right back." He walked out the front door. At first, nobody cared, but 10 minutes passed, then 15. My sister pulled out her phone, tried to play it off. "He probably had to deal with something urgent," she said, but her voice had that nervous brightness she gets when she's covering for someone. I stepped away from the table under the excuse of stretching my legs and looked out the window. His car was gone. No text, no call. Just gone. I didn't tell her right away. She was still laughing at something one of the kids said, holding on to the evening like nothing was wrong. I didn't have the heart to drop the whole truth in the middle of dessert, but I went home thinking about that blank look he had before he left. The next morning, at roll call, The sergeant mentioned a burglary across town the night before. Homeowner walked in on the guy. Suspect bolted out the back door. When they put the doorbell cam footage up on the screen, my stomach dropped. The video was grainy, sure, but the build, the haircut, the jacket, even the way the guy scanned the porch. I'd literally watched that silhouette sit at my sister's table hours earlier. Same posture, same shoes. I didn't say anything in front of the room, but as soon as briefing ended, I walked outside and called my sister. She answered sounding tired. "Hey," she said. "Sorry about last night. I still haven't heard from him." "Can you do something for me?" I asked. "Tell me exactly what he was wearing. Shoes too." She listed everything off, not thinking twice. It was the same outfit as the suspect in the footage, down to the shoes. "Why?" she asked. I told her. Not everything. I left out the part where I was 90% sure, but enough. She got very quiet. "How long have you known him?" I asked. 3 months, she said. Maybe 4. Why? "Where does he live?" She hesitated. "He's been staying in different places because of work. He said his apartment was being renovated." It went on like that. Half-truths piled on half-truths. She realized it as she said it. The longer we talked, the more she understood she didn't actually know anything real about him. Later that day, I gave detectives everything she told me. His first name, the number he'd used, the fake job details, screenshots of his texts. They couldn't share much back, but their tone said enough. A day later, Evan's number stopped working. 2 days later, his social media vanished. My sister deleted their photos, blocked everything, then cried over the fact that she let him sit next to our nieces at dinner. That part shook her the worst. "You think he used me?" she asked. "I think he was trying on a life," I said, seeing how it fit. I didn't tell her the rest of what I suspected, that guys like him don't usually settle for one burglary. They drift, they charm, they slip into families and slip back out before people get suspicious. At Christmas, she joked she was off dating for a bit. Everyone laughed like that made it better. But at the next family gathering, I caught her checking the windows 3 times in an hour. He was never arrested, at least not here. Maybe he jumped to another state. Maybe he's still going to family dinners, just someone else's, and slipping out the door halfway through. All I know is this. People think danger shows up wearing a mask, carrying a weapon, breaking a window at midnight. Sometimes danger shows up with flowers, smiles at your parents, tells jokes to your nieces, and disappears right before dessert. These days, when friends talk about bringing someone new to Thanksgiving, I tell them, half joking, fully serious, ask more questions than you think you need to. People audition all the time. Most shrug it off, but I've seen who walks out the front door and never comes back. If any of these stories had you mentally checking your own locks, welcome to the club. Smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me which story messed with you the most. And if you think the highway is the safest place to clear your head, oh man, this next video will fix that real quick. Click now to watch 4 scary highway horror stories, because some people on the road aren't trying to get somewhere, they're trying to get someone. Or just kick back. The next nightmare will roll in automatically. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.